Welcome to the Criminal Defense Show. I'm your host, Kelly Carpenter. My guest today is Deandra Grant, owner and founder of Hamilton Grant PC, headquartered in Texas. Deandra founded her firm just 2 years after completing law school. She's practiced criminal defense for over 25 years, with DWI being a cornerstone of her practice. And she's one of the rare attorneys with a forensic lawyer scientist designation, which we will definitely get into later. Deandra is also a national speaker and teacher, a wife, mother, dog rescuer, artist, and wine connoisseur.
That's
Welcome
right.
to the show, Deandra.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We're glad to have you. I have heard your name on so many different channels over the years with other attorneys who want what you have and they want to be you. So I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but I just wanted to let you know legendary status is what you have attained. So
Well, and at such a young age. I mean, I'm practically
Exactly.
a child.
yeah, you're going to have to tell us your secrets. We'll get to that.
Hard work. Very hard work.
I can see that. Absolutely. Well, can you give us like a 2-minute history of your journey into the practice of law and particularly owning your own firm?
Sure. I started interning at the Dallas DA's office when I was still in law school. Went to work there right out of law school. Left the DA's office in 1994. Started my own firm that same day. And then I existed actually for almost over 20 years as the law offices of Deandra M. Grant. And then in August of 2018, a very good friend of mine named Stephen Hamilton and I got together and merged his firm, which was in the west part of Texas, with my firm. And then we purchased a third firm at the same time and absorbed it. So I went from me and an associate and my little staff to this giant organization literally overnight. We now have 9 offices across the state. I run 5 of them, and I manage a bunch of lawyers and a whole lot of administrative people, and it is keeping me very busy. And I also have a lot of other things I do on the side. You mentioned I run a dog rescue, which has been crazy busy lately. We're having puppies actually today. One of our dogs is in labor. And then I'm also executive director of the DUI Defense Lawyers Association, which is an international bar association with about 900 members. And so I wear a lot of hats. Let's just put it that way. A lot of hats.
To say the least. Jeez, yeah, that's a ton of hats to be wearing. Well, that's really interesting about the growth that your firm had. You started as a 3-person practice and then very quickly grew. Tell me about that experience and what that was like.
Well, day one, it was just me. It was quite a few years before I even had a legal assistant. And then I went through a series of associates over the years. But at the time of the merger, I had 2 administrative people and 1 lawyer working for me. And now I manage 5 offices that are staffed and crazy. So the first year was actually very hard. It was a whole new experience for me. I was used to just being the trial lawyer, and I wasn't used to the management aspect of it. We are doing much better now. I delegate. I have some really great people that know exactly what I want them doing, and we have a tremendous number of processes in place in the firm. So even if I'm gone somewhere, because in a non-COVID world, I'm gone teaching about 13 weeks every year. So the firm has to carry on without me being there personally. So it was good during COVID, too, during the shutdowns. We never really shut down because we're essential, but everybody was working from home. And it really was pretty flawless. I mean, we never missed a beat because we just have all of these processes in place, and it keeps the ball rolling no matter what happens.
That's great. Even in a pandemic.
Even in a pandemic.
Keep rolling. Well, mergers aren't something you often hear about with law firms.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that a little bit more. How did you know that was the right move? What kind of set the stage for that?
Well, like I said, Stephen and I had been friends for a long time. We had very similar practices, and we both were trying to sort of go to the next level. And it was easier to do if we pulled or combined resources. And then we, at the exact same time, had the opportunity, an attorney that he knew was trying to get out of the practice of law. He was going into a business direction, and he had a somewhat sizable law firm in the DFW Metroplex, and he wanted to sell. So we ended up purchasing, absorbing, and merging. Probably the biggest difficulty with all of it was different cultures. You know, you take 3 law firms and try to smush them all together, and it's people with are used to different things, different cultures in the group, and that took a little bit of time to just get everybody on the same page and knowing what they were supposed to do. And so, yeah, that first year was crazy. But yeah, there aren't a lot of mergers. That's not really a normal thing you see in criminal defense world. It happens a lot in the civil world.
Well, I want to get into your history a little bit with all of this training and certifications that you've done on the scientific side of DWI. Was there a specific event that sparked your interest in that discipline?
Well, it was a progression. I first started studying breath alcohol analysis. I ended up going to Florida and going through a multi-day program and got some certifications in breath alcohol analysis and handling of a particular instrument that we were using in Texas called the Intoxilizer 5000. At that time, we now have the Intoxilizer 9000. And then I saw the writing on the wall that we were going to start moving towards blood alcohol analysis in Texas, and I started attending seminars outside of Texas, learning all about blood alcohol analysis. Went to several in Georgia and some other states, and continued taking, courses and things of that nature. And then I ultimately decided to go back to school, and I applied for the University of Florida College of Pharmaceutical Medicine or Pharmaceutical Science, and went to school there to get my master's degree. And so it was their College of Pharmacy. But at the same time, I was about halfway through that degree program. There was an opportunity to apply for a forensic toxicology program, which it was a graduate certificate, and it was through the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Florida. So I applied and got into that one, and I was going to both colleges at the same time, and finally graduated in 2016, I believe, from both of them, one in the summer and one in the fall. And that was exciting, but it took 3 years, and it was a lot of work. It was more work than I thought it was going to be, but I finished it.
That's insane.
It was a little insane. My husband thought I was crazy.
Valid. I have to side with your husband on this one. Crazy, but it's paying off. I mean, tell me about, how that benefits you now in your practice.
Well, a great deal of prosecution of intoxication-related offenses these days involves allegations that the person is intoxicated on medications or other substances. It is the big push with the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. It is what police officers are being taught, and people are constantly being arrested, and it's DWI in Texas. For DWI, with the allegation that they're intoxicated on a substance. It's not alcohol, or it could be a combination with alcohol. So one of the things that I have that a lot of other lawyers don't have is this pharmaceutical science degree. So I can look at a case and levels of drugs and things of that nature in a different way. I look at it in a more scientific way than trial lawyer way, because sometimes I have to balance the two. Sometimes I'm the trial lawyer, and sometimes I'm the forensic scientist. And then I also do a tremendous amount of consulting work. So lawyers will hire me to evaluate their client's case and then give them my opinion on the best defense for that client. And in some cases, I end up being the expert. I get appointed by some of the district judges here in Dallas County on some felony indigent cases to do that as a forensic consultant. So I would say probably about, prior to COVID, about 40% of my caseload was other lawyers' cases. that I was doing
Cool.
case evaluations on, or possibly trying the case with them.
Wow. So, I mean, that experience has really paid off. I mean, you're able not only to show up for your own clients in a more, you know, round way, well-rounded way, but you're also able to do that for other attorneys who need your expertise.
Yes, it keeps me very busy writing because I write reports for the attorneys. And it's been great during the shutdown when I wasn't in trial. I have had a lot more time to do that. But I also write a book, and I have to update it every year. And I wrote all the technical and scientific sections of that book. I have a co-author that does other parts of the book. And it's become kind of the main book I think lawyers in Texas use that are trying DWI cases. It's kind of their litigation guide or trial notebook. And because I have to keep that up every year, I got to stay current. It makes me stay current on everything. So.
Sure does. I can't imagine what the time demands must be for that every year, refreshing that. I mean, how much?
It's a lot. Well, I usually, I typically will bring in a intern to do the case law updates, to just go in and check all the case law, and we got to keep the case law current in the book, and that's usually what some of the biggest changes. But I typically spend the better part of August and at least half of September updating the book. It's usually about 6 weeks of my time every year.
Significant.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Chunk of time. What advice do you have for an attorney who's thinking about getting their feet wet with some of these scientific certifications, but maybe they're not sure which one to do? Do you have any that you would start with based on everything you know?
If you are a DUI, DWI, OVI practitioner, depending on what state you're in, because it's different every state, I would start with finding a standardized field sobriety testing course to go through, because the number one thing you're going to be dealing with are field sobriety tests in your DWI cases. So there are several fantastic individuals, former police officers around the country that teach those courses all over the place. If you're not a member of the DUI Defense Lawyers Association, you're welcome to join that group, and then we usually promote those courses. Do that first and get that under your belt so you understand how to take those kinds of tests apart in trial. And then I would, depending on your jurisdiction, if it's more of a breath alcohol heavy jurisdiction, then you might want to find a course to go to on your particular breath testing instrument. Or if it's more blood, then I would look at going to Axion Labs, which is the main training facility for the American Chemical Society. They put on 4 courses a year for lawyers on how blood alcohol is determined, how to work, how gas chromatography works. There's one solid drug course where you learn how they identify drugs. There's a DUID course where you learn how to recognize signs of intoxication in drugged drivers and things of that sort. It's a great program. I'm on the faculty, so if you come to a course, I'll be one of your teachers. And then once you do that, you will find more and more training to go to. There's always a next level, but you got to start with field sobriety testing because that's the backbone of a DWI case.
Really good advice. Thank you for that. Well, I'm curious. I have to know, which one of your trainings or certifications has been your favorite?
Well, it's not even what I do most of the time, but my favorite course is the solid drug course at the Axion Laboratory in Chicago, because it's learning how to identify substances. So if the police officers pull someone over and they suspect they have cocaine or whatever, and it's all the steps they have to go through to identify the substance, it's actually the most interesting to me. There's all sorts of color tests they can do and all kinds of fun stuff. That course at Axion is very fun. So if you also have a general defense practice and you're handling drug cases as well, you will look at your drug cases completely different to see whether they can really prove it was cocaine, and that's the most fun course. I tell everyone, when you get to that level at Axion, when you get to that stage, that'll be your favorite course.
Could you give us some insight into the challenges or things that you've had to overcome in a typically male-dominated industry?
I think the biggest challenges I have faced And I don't really face them anymore for a variety of reasons. But back in the day, as I was coming up in this DWI specific field, there were not a lot of female top of the field DWI defense lawyers. There was definitely a lot of career sabotage that took place along the way. And it doesn't happen anymore. Like I said, I mean, times have changed. I reached a level where they have no impact on me anymore, which is nice. But there were challenges, and the glass ceilings that existed are fewer and fewer. And I have a daughter, she's 13. I have no idea if she'll go to law school or not, but if she did, or whatever field she goes into, hopefully more and more of that will be gone.
What other advice do you have, Deandra, for attorneys out there, things we haven't covered yet today?
If you are, I'm assuming in private practice, you're not employed by someone. I guess I would speak more to that. You have to watch the business at the same time that you're watching your criminal cases that you're defending. Because if you spend all your time chasing money and doing those sorts of things, then you're not really practicing law. And so you either have to have someone helping you, maybe it's an accountant or a business manager or a paralegal or someone helping you run the business part so you can be the lawyer, or you have to become the managing person in the law firm and you do it, and then other people are doing the law part. But it's doing both is very difficult. I do both, but I'm a crazy person, so I love running the business. I didn't think I would, but I do. So you really have to keep up with that. You still have to pay your bills. You still have to pay your employees. You still have to pay yourself. So, watching the business and running it like a business and remembering that's what it is very important. And it took me quite a few years in private practice to understand that, to really run my law practice like a business. I would also say, take advantage. There are a lot of groups out there that you can find in your local areas, or maybe even like on Facebook or something, of older criminal defense attorneys, or even just attorneys that are running practices that can give you a lot of advice that will help you. We didn't have that there was no Facebook. We barely had cell phones when I first started practicing law. We all used beepers. Like, I used to walk around with a beeper all the time, and the courts would beep me when they were ready, page me when they were ready for me to come back to court. So take advantage of all of these social media opportunities, because you would really be amazed all the things that you can learn. Join bar associations, get a mentor, and learn from that person. Maybe you'll go to work for a firm where you'll have a mentor, but having a mentor as a young lawyer can be very crucial, and there are just so many opportunities for doing that these days. I would highly recommend it.
Very good advice. Thank you. Well, I have my dog laying on the floor here next to me, and he just let out the loudest sigh ever, so I'm not sure if the microphone picked that out. But it gave me an idea. I wanted to hear more about your dog rescue. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I have a dear friend who is actually a deputy sheriff here in Dallas County, and she has been a bailiff for years and years and years, and that's how I knew her. I used to try a lot of cases in drug court in Dallas, so I handled, back before I started focusing on DWIs, I did a tremendous number of drug cases that I handled and tried a lot of cases. Anyway, so she and I got to be friends, and she started rescuing, she lives out in the country, rescuing all these dachshunds from shelters, and they get dumped in the country and all kinds of things. And I talked to her about forming a charity, getting herself, filed and everything as a charity, and I ended up becoming the vice president of the charity. And I'm sort of the chief fundraiser. So we have big fundraisers. We've built a building. We've done all kinds of great, crazy stuff. And now we have probably about 40 to 45 dogs that live at the sanctuary at any given time. Some of them can be adopted. Some of them cannot. They have health problems, or they bite, so they've been abused. And so they just live at the sanctuary. They're not being adopted. But others that can be are regularly being adopted, going on trial visits. And then we have dogs coming in constantly. We actually have a lot of Chihuahuas and Chiweenies because we end up with small breeds. So it's not all dachshunds. Sometimes it's some mixes. And we are just known in this area that we take in these dogs and try to find them homes. So we have a lot. And the interesting thing about the snowpocalypse we just went through in Texas is that they lost power and heat and water and everything at the sanctuary. And she ended up having to bring all the dogs into her house. So it was about 40 degrees in her house, and she had about 45 dogs, trying to keep them warm and fed and having water. That went on for about 3 days, and it was crazy, but all the dogs survived. They're all now back in their building, and one of them is giving birth, I think, today. So we're going to have an increase in the numbers here in just a little bit.
Oh my gosh. To be a fly on the wall in her house during that 3-day time period.
It was rough.
I can't imagine.
It was rough.
Well, Deandra, thank you so much for doing this with me today. You've been amazing, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Well, it's been fun. I appreciate it. Happy to come back anytime.
We'd love to have you back sometime. Well, if you found today's episode helpful, do me a favor, share it with those in your circle. We'd really appreciate that. And as always, you can find our show notes over on our website, scorpion.co. That's scorpion.co without the N. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.